Karl Braig was a theologian of anti-modernism, and we were looking at the relationship between. We were trying to see what anti-modernism could mean in different usages. So anti-modernism could be the total rejection of modernism, and anti-modernism can be a partial rejection of modernism. Also, anti-modernism can be a revolutionary movement in the sense that it is trying to replace modernism with something else. Or it can be mere rejection, like it rejects modernism partially or totally, but doesn't have anything else to put in its place. So in that sense, it would be a reactionary move. And a lot of time, also when people call these days, because modernism is a dominant civilizational force today, so to portray somebody as anti-modernist is basically a value judgment in a sense. So, and oftentimes when people say anti-modernists, those people they're describing, they are not anti-modernists, but different ideologies of modernism sometimes blame each other of anti-modernism because they are critical of some aspects of modernism, etc. So Catholicism has been described as anti-modernist, especially in 19th and early 20th centuries, because Catholicism was the civilization which was replaced by modernism. So Catholicism is seen as some, in that sense, potentially at least anti-modernist. But we know, like other forms of Christianity, Catholicism has generally accepted modernism. So Catholicism might reject certain aspects of modernism or certain interpretation of modernism, but even to I don't know whether Karl Braig is anti-modernist in any interesting sense. People call Heidegger as anti-modernist, but he's not anti-modernist in any specific sense. In fact, he will say he's a modernist in the sense that he believes in freedom and all that. Freedom is very important for Heidegger. Has always been important for Heidegger, for early Heidegger, for later Heidegger. So the purpose of this reading this passage is to understand these things a bit, really. Okay. So Karl Braig was a theologian of anti-modernism. That's Francis' words. Ever since the papal encyclical Pascendi Domi Gregis of 1907, which had declared war on modernism. De Falsis Doctrines Modernismus or Modernistarum, modernism and anti-modernism had become the banners of an intellectual battle, not only within Catholicism. So this relates to what I already said about Catholicism. The anti-modernists were not simply out to defend the Church's dogmas, such as that of Immaculate Conception or the principle of clerical hierarchy, such as the Pope's infallibility. That was how their opponents were fond of depicting them. Yeah, so that's what I was saying. Often it's just because modernism is considered something normatively desirable, to call someone anti-modernist is just to malign them in a way that after that you don't need to really analyze their what they're saying. You can just reject them summarily because they are against something which is obviously good. So that was how their opponents were fond of depicting them, regarding anti-modernism as nothing but a dangerous or possibly ludicrous conspiracy of obscurantists against the scientific spirit of the age, against enlightenment. So who are some of the telltales of anti-modernists against science? But the thing is, if you try to critically assess scientific science, you can be easily dubbed anti-modernists against enlightenment. Now, there are many movements which are considered anti-enlightenment, like Romanticism, for example, which are not really anti-modernist as such. Humanism. So if you are against humanism, then you are considered anti-modernist, or used to. But as we know, there are non-humanistic streams in modernism, so progressive ideas of every kind. Okay. So far, just providing the context. So Karl Braig was an illustration of the fact that one could be anti-modernist without becoming a obscurantist. Obscurant is mean, somebody who talks or writes in a way which is, not easily understandable, writes in, enigmatic way. But then, Hegel is obscurantist often, but he's not an anti-modernist. But there are people who have claimed Hegel was anti-modernist too. So there you go. His was a shrewd mind, discovering the unreflected prerequisites of it in their numerous variants in the modern scientific attitude. What was that? His was a shrewd mind. Okay, he's smart guy, discovering the unreflected prerequisites of faith in numerous variants of it. What he's saying is that he pointed out, which was later pointed out by several modernists themselves, that even though modernists are against faith, there is an element of faith in modernism as well. So it's not all presuppositionless thinking. Even science starts with some sort of faith, a different faith, but you still need faith. Faith meaning, you start with presuppositions, you start with axioms, which you accept as obvious or self-evident. That's what faith is, really. So that which believed itself to be without faith and without assumptions he wished to rouse from a dogmatic slumber. So basically, he pointed out something which is commonplace today, that every that which believe itself to be without faith and without assumptions. So assumptionless or presuppositionless philosophy or science is outdated thing. Very few people believe it today. But in the heyday of enlightenment, people thought that scientific thinking was something which was presuppositionless. That's why it was a superior type of thinking as compared to, for example, religious thinking or other types of thinking. Okay. The so-called agnostics, he argued, that is Karl Braig, also had a faith, albeit a particularly primitive and homespun one, belief in progress in science, in biological evolution that favors mankind, in economic and historical laws. So he's a critic of modernism, or aspects of modernism, which today are accepted as part of modernism, really. Today nobody will call you, or at least shouldn't call you, anti-modernist just because you critically you believe that there's no such thing as presuppositionless worldview or presuppositionless science or philosophy, etc. Now from here, he's going to start from here, the critique of modernity, actually. And I think we should stop here, and then next session we'll do it from here.